My name is Joanna Miles and I learned very early in life that in my family image always came before truth, and the one who paid the price for that was always me. I grew up hearing laughter that was not kind, smiles that were not warm, and silence that spoke louder than words. I was the girl who never quite fit into the picture, the girl who tried harder and still came up short, the girl who learned to stay quiet because every time I spoke I reminded them of something they wanted to forget. That night began like every other Sunday dinner, the same polished table, the same forced smiles, the same careful arrangement of plates and expectations. I walked into the house carrying the familiar weight in my chest, knowing exactly what awaited me. My mother was already arranging the dishes with military precision, her eyes scanning everything except me. My father sat at the table flipping through mail like my presence required no acknowledgement. I sat quietly, taking my place in the corner of the table where I always belonged, unnoticed, unimportant, invisible. Then my sister arrived, glowing, as always, followed by Evan, her new boyfriend. The room changed. Instantly my parents straightened their posture, their voices softened, their eyes lit up. Evan carried himself like a man who expected admiration, and he received it effortlessly. He shook my father's hand, warmly complimented my mother's cooking before even tasting it, and within seconds became the center of attention. I watched silently as my family leaned into his stories, absorbing every word as if it were gold. Dinner progressed smoothly until it reached me, as it always did. Evan turned his attention toward me and asked about my work in a tone that pretended curiosity but carried judgment beneath it. I answered briefly, not giving him the satisfaction of detail. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father looked away. My sister stared at her plate. Evan leaned back, then smiling as if he had found the opening he wanted, he began talking about ambition, success, and work ethic, weaving stories of meetings and projects and influence, and then casually asked if I was still unemployed, like it was a harmless joke. The table erupted in laughter. My father nodded in agreement. My mother sighed theatrically. My sister gave a tight smile. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like ice breaking beneath still water. I stayed silent. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I did not explain. I simply listened, and while he spoke, something strange happened. His words began to unravel, small inconsistencies slipped through, details that did not align, phrases that sounded memorized, not lived. I noticed them all, and for the first time I realized Evan was not who he claimed to be. That night I went home carrying more than humiliation. I carried curiosity, and curiosity, once awakened, refuses to sleep. Over the next days I researched quietly. Carefully I looked into his background, his company, his experience, and slowly the image he had painted began to dissolve. His professional history was vague, his achievements untraceable, his impressive titles unsupported. Then I discovered the shell company, registered under a virtual address. No employees, no projects, no public presence. Yet financial records showed irregular deposits from different individuals, people who believed they were investing in something real. Evan was not successful, he was convincing. The realization did not fill me with anger, it filled me with clarity. My sister was engaged to a man built on lies. My family was preparing to celebrate an illusion, and I had been given a front row seat. I did not expose him immediately. I waited, I gathered proof, I connected the dots. I let him grow, more confident, more careless, more visible, because lies always grow bold before they collapse. The wedding plans moved quickly. My parents were proud. They boasted about their future son-in-law to anyone who would listen. The image was perfect, until the engagement party. The room was filled with relatives, business, acquaintances, and friends. Evan stood proudly at the center, soaking in admiration, delivering another polished performance. I waited until the moment was right, until everyone was listening, until silence settled naturally. Then I spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just clearly. I asked him about his consulting firm by name. He answered smoothly. Then I asked about specific projects he claimed to manage. His hesitation was brief but visible. Then I mentioned the registered address of his company, the deposits, the investors, the lack of documentation. The room went still. Faces shifted, confusion replaced admiration. Evan tried to laugh it off, but his voice betrayed him. Someone asked for clarification. Another asked for proof. I had it all: records, emails, transfers, everything. My sister stared at him, waiting for an explanation. That never came. My parents looked between us, unable to process the collapse of the perfect image they had built. Evan stood frozen, his carefully constructed world unraveling in seconds. He left that night without saying goodbye. The engagement ended. The wedding vanished. The silence that followed was heavy but different. For the first time it was not aimed at me, it was aimed at the truth. Weeks passed before my family spoke of it again. When they did, there were no apologies, no dramatic realizations, only quiet acknowledgement. But something had shifted. They looked at me differently, not with admiration, not with pride, but with awareness. And that was enough. Because I did not need their validation, I only needed my voice back. I had spent my life shrinking to fit into spaces that never wanted me to stand tall. But that night taught me something powerful. Truth does not need permission to exist, it only needs courage to be spoken. And sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the loudest truth. The days after the engagement party felt unreal, like waking up inside someone else's life. My phone stayed silent, no messages from my sister, no calls from my parents, no explanations, no accusations, only distance. And in that silence I felt something strange. Relief, not happiness, not victory, just relief, like a weight I had carried for years had finally loosened its grip. But truth rarely ends cleanly. When illusions collapse, they leave behind fragments sharp enough to cut everyone involved, and my family was bleeding in ways they did not know how to admit. One afternoon my sister finally called. Her voice was small, fragile, stripped of the confidence she had worn so easily before. She asked if we could meet, not at home, not at a restaurant, just somewhere quiet. We sat on a park bench watching children chase each other across the grass. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The wind moved gently through the trees as if giving us space. Finally she whispered, "I did not want to believe you." I nodded. I already knew. She told me how Evan had promised her everything: stability, admiration, security. She said he made her feel chosen in a way she never had before. She said she ignored the signs because believing was easier than doubting. Then she asked me the question I had been waiting for: why did you wait? Why didn't you tell me earlier? I looked at her and answered softly, "Because you were not ready to hear it, and because I needed proof strong enough to survive denial." She cried, then not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way people cry when something inside them finally breaks. And in that moment I realized that exposing the truth had not made me powerful, it had simply made me honest. Our parents reacted differently. My mother became distant, embarrassed by the public collapse of her perfect image. My father retreated into silence, refusing to discuss what had happened, as if ignoring it could undo it. They did not apologize, they did not thank me, they simply moved on and expected me to do the same. But something subtle had changed. They no longer mocked, they no longer laughed, they no longer inspected my life for flaws. Instead they avoided the topic altogether, because acknowledging my insight would require acknowledging their blindness. I returned to my work, quietly rebuilding projects, refining strategies, consulting for clients who valued results more than appearances. Each small success strengthened something inside me that had been fragile for too long. Then the unexpected happened. A message arrived from one of the investors Evan had deceived. He had tracked me down after the exposure and wanted to thank me. He told me my evidence had helped him recover part of his money and prevent others from falling into the same trap. He asked about my work, about my skills, about my goals. That conversation led to another, and then another, until suddenly, opportunities opened that I had never been offered before. Not because I asked, but because people saw value instead of assumption. Weeks turned into months. I found myself leading projects, advising teams, shaping strategies. My confidence grew naturally, without performance, without exaggeration, without lies. Meanwhile, Evan disappeared. No online presence, no public traces. Just another illusion erased by daylight. One evening my mother called. She spoke awkwardly, uncertainly, as if she were stepping onto unfamiliar ground. She asked about my work. She listened instead of interrupting. She thanked me for coming to family dinners even when they made me uncomfortable. It was not an apology, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. I was never weak. I was simply surrounded by people who needed me to be small so they could feel large. But small people grow, and quiet voices learn to carry truth. And once truth is spoken, it cannot be undone. The call came late at night, the kind of call that changes the air in the room. Before you even answer, I hesitated for a second, then picked up. It was Alex. His voice was calm but serious. He said Evan had been arrested. I did not react immediately. I just sat there holding the phone, letting the words sink in. The silence after his statement felt heavier than the noise of everything that had happened before. Alex explained that once the engagement party incident spread, more investors came forward. Some had lost far more money than they initially admitted. Others had been threatened with legal pressure if they spoke. Combined together, their testimonies painted a clear picture. Evan had built a network of deception, using charm, confidence, and carefully crafted lies to extract money from people who believed they were buying into success. It was not one mistake, it was a system. Hearing it did not bring me satisfaction, it brought closure, because truth had finally stepped fully into the light. The news reached my family quickly. My father called that same night. His voice shook slightly as he asked if I had known this would happen. I told him no, I only knew the truth would eventually find its way forward. There was a long pause before he whispered, "I should have trusted you." Those words carried more weight than any apology he had ever given. My mother did not call. Instead, she sent a message, short, restrained, but sincere. She wrote, "I am sorry for how we treated you. I did not understand you, and I should have." It was the first time she had ever admitted fault. My sister struggled the most. She blamed herself for weeks, replaying every moment, every sign she had ignored, every instinct she had silenced. I reminded Her gently that manipulation works because it targets hope, not weakness, that loving someone is never wrong, trusting them is never foolish, the fault lies only with those who exploit it. Slowly she began to heal. As Evan faced legal consequences, my own life moved forward in ways I had never imagined. The investors who had contacted me introduced me to larger networks, strategy firms, venture groups, ethical startups. They valued my insight, my analytical ability, my integrity. They saw not only skill but perspective born from survival. Opportunities unfolded naturally, not through self-promotion but through trust. Within months, I was leading major consulting projects, shaping long-term strategies, advising executive teams. My name began to circulate in professional spaces where before it had never existed, not as a novelty, not as an exception, but as a force. One afternoon I was invited to speak at a conference, the same type Evan once claimed to attend. I stood on a stage facing hundreds of professionals sharing real experience, real knowledge, real impact. As I spoke, I felt something settle within me, a quiet confidence not built on applause but on truth. Later that evening, my sister hugged me longer than usual and whispered, "I'm proud of you, not because you exposed him, but because you never let them break you." Those words healed something deep inside me. My parents changed slowly but meaningfully. My mother began listening instead of correcting. My father asked for my advice instead of dismissing it. Family dinners became quieter, gentler, less performative, more real. And in that transformation, I realized something profound. Some families build their identity on perfection, others build it on growth. We were learning to grow. One night as I walked home under a sky scattered with stars, I thought about the girl I used to be, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who absorbed laughter and swallowed pain. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her one thing: you will not always be unseen. Your voice will matter. Your truth will change lives. And you will become everything they never believed you could be. The final chapter of my journey did not arrive with noise or applause. It arrived quietly on an ordinary morning when I stood in front of a mirror and finally saw myself clearly. Not the reflection shaped by judgment, not the shadow of expectations, but the woman who had survived every silent battle and still chose truth. I had spent so many years shrinking myself to fit inside other people's comfort. I had made myself small so their egos could remain large. I had swallowed pain so their image would remain intact, and in doing so I had almost forgotten who I really was. But healing has a way of restoring what was buried. One afternoon I returned to my parents' house alone. I walked through rooms filled with memories, some painful, some bittersweet. I stood in my childhood bedroom, tracing my fingers across the walls, remembering the dreams I once whispered to them in the dark. Dreams no one had listened to. I sat on the bed and allowed myself to cry, not for the pain I had endured, but for the strength it had taken to survive it. In that moment I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. That forgiveness did not erase the past, but it released its hold on my future. As my career expanded, I began mentoring young women who reminded me of myself. Quiet, brilliant, invisible. I watched their confidence grow as they realized their worth, and in helping them I healed myself further. Every success became more meaningful when it was shared. Every victory sweeter when it lifted others alongside me. Months later I received an invitation to speak at a national forum about resilience, identity, and truth. Standing behind that podium I felt the weight of every experience that had brought me there. The humiliation, the silence, the betrayal, the patience, the courage, the clarity. I told them that strength is not loud, it does not announce itself. It grows quietly in the shadows, waiting for the moment it is needed. I told them that truth does not chase attention. It waits until lies collapse under their own weight. I told them that sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one who changes everything. And as I spoke, I saw faces soften, I saw understanding awaken, I saw hope take shape. That was when I realized something profound. My story was never meant to break me. It was meant to build me into someone capable of carrying light for others. The girl who once sat silent at a dinner table had become a voice that traveled beyond walls, beyond cities, beyond fear. I had become free. And freedom is not revenge. It is peace. It is clarity. It is self-respect. It is knowing your value without needing permission. I no longer measured myself through the eyes of those who could not see me. I no longer waited for approval. I no longer apologized for existing. I simply lived, fully, honestly, bravely. And in doing so I finally understood the greatest truth of all. Sometimes the ones who are overlooked are the ones destined to rise the highest. Not to prove anything, but to remind the world what quiet strength looks like.